This is a unique moment in Sudan's history, but it is also a unique moment for the international community because this is also part of the conversation. And during my meetings over the last few days here in Khartoum, but also in Darfur, where I traveled for one day, was very much focused on understanding what is it that will make the people of Sudan, but also Sudan's economy and Sudan's political process maintain the confidence in the future and not lose heart over many of the challenges that are faced. For many people in Sudan, life is extremely hard. Internally displaced people, conflict, violence have been part of their lives, sometimes for generations. Their ability to believe that the future is one that holds hope is perhaps sometimes something that requires a great deal of imagination. And yet, I must say, there are few countries across the world today that have been able to generate a vision and an energy and an outlook into the future as Sudan's youth and young people, and particularly also its women leaders, have done over the last year. And to me, it was very important to meet both with senior leaders in government, but also to meet with young people who still are very much part of that promise to the future that Sudan today embodies. And I must say to the people of Sudan, and you probably know this, what an extraordinary youth you have, what extraordinary leaders you have, and what wise counsel also elders have given at this moment in time. The future of Sudan is fragile. Every Sudanese knows that, and every outsider may sense that. But what I have also seen is an extraordinary belief in the future of this country and an extraordinary wisdom in young people that you rarely find in other places in a moment of crisis. This energy, this capacity to conceive of Sudan's future is a unique resource. For us as the United Nations Development Programme, it's not only a privilege, it's an obligation to now step forward and be able to support the institutions of government, but also in the rural economy, and also those who perhaps through conflict and displacement still find themselves very much dependent on humanitarian aid to rapidly find ways in which the development perspective begins to drive also the future of the economy and of the international community. We owe to the humanitarian community an extraordinary debt of gratitude as a global community because in crisis moments it is their work that saves lives. And this remains an issue that many Sudanese citizens experience every day. But the future is not premised on the desperation of one day or of today. It has to be that the future is built in the rural areas, in the cities, in the agricultural sector, in the energy sector, but also in the way that government can deliver a developmental state, which is really what will drive the future of Sudan's development. In listening very carefully to many of the conversations, I believe that as the United Nations family, but also in particular as the United Nations Development Programme, we have a significant opportunity and also many requests to work with you over the coming years. But what is also quite clear after listening to everyone I have spoken to are two things that will define success or failure of these partnerships: scale and urgency. This is not a moment to simply experiment, to have so-called lighthouse projects to show that this is how it could be done. Sudan is on a very tight time schedule of 32 months, roughly, before the people of Sudan will either vote with confidence in the future or may perhaps turn away from what is a window of opportunity. To deliver into that moment in time is not only the obligation of leaders and of every citizen, but also the international community. And therefore I want to say that today, as head of the United Nations Development Programme, I do not leave the country simply with some observations. We have discussed with leaders in government, including with members of the Sovereign Council, with the Prime Minister's office, with ministers in the line ministries, significant areas where we consider UNDP now having to step forward and really provide significantly enhanced support. We already committed when I met the Prime Minister last September in New York that we would support him in trying to get the Prime Minister's office in a position where, together with other partners, he has the ability to draw on cutting-edge expertise from within the country, where necessary from outside the country, and therefore also our support to his strong focus to engage the diaspora. All the Sudanese brothers and sisters who live across the globe and who are watching what is happening here with a desire to become engaged and to also support. But that requires government to create the conditions. It requires the lifting of the Sudanese sponsor of terrorism list challenge, because even financial transfers right now are extremely challenging. It also requires us to lean forward and invest significantly in the institutions of government, in governance, and therefore also in the rule of law, in the respect for human rights, in legislative reform, including of the justice system. These are priorities that have been agreed in the Sovereign Council in the process of political reconciliation. UNDP worldwide is an institution that works with governments to address these challenges, be they in capacity building in public institutions, but also looking at new regulatory frameworks. Let me just mention the emergence of a digital economy also in Sudan. Whether it succeeds, whether it moves fast or not, is in part a product of how modern, smart regulatory frameworks are established to allow new technologies and markets to emerge that also create new services, including for financial inclusion.